Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome this evening to another segment of the Real Mike Pittman podcast. I'm calling this Freestyle Friday. And what I wanted to talk about tonight was the importance of home ownership. What I wanted to talk about tonight was the importance, and especially home ownership in the Black community. As some of you might know or have heard, that home ownership is the number one way or the most important way. Let me put it like that. I won't say the number one way because there are some people that do other things, but historically has been one of the top ways that Black people have earned wealth in this country, and it's been through home ownership. Unfortunately, in the early part of the 19th century, or the 30s and 40s, when many of our Black men were coming back from the war, there was a thing called the GI Bill, which enabled these individuals that had been in the service to get loans to buy houses. Unfortunately, there was a lot of discrimination in that time, to whereby the Black soldiers that were coming home weren't not allowed, uh, because of discrimination and redlining and whatever you have, weren't allowed to access these GA loans, government loans, which were basically, I believe, 100% financing. And as a result of that, they weren't able, in the masses that whites were able to do it, to purchase homes, which those homes basically now will probably belong to their great grandparents, who took those homes, paid them off, willed them to their children, who hit that same home when they passed on or retired or whatnot, willed it to their children. And over the course of 40, 50, 60 years, there was probably a mass appreciation in those homes as well, which resulted in you being 21, 22, 24 years old, and your willed the house is probably worth 400,000, 450,000, 200,000, whatever that amount might be. But at the same time, that house is paid for, so that's an asset that you have. And these opportunities were denied in mass, as I stated earlier, uh, to Blacks throughout the country. And even historically now, home ownership for Blacks in the United States sits at about 44%, which is 30% lower than the white counterparts. Also, the Black home ownership is the lowest out of any minority group in the country. And up until 2019, that number had stayed so stagnant in terms of from the 1960s, 1960 itself up to about 2019, that number remained stagnant. So from 2019 to 2021, there was an increase in Black home ownership, and mainly a lot that had to do with where the interest rates were at the time. During that point in time, there was about $5.8 billion, $5.8 billion in mortgages savings, and of that amount, about 198 million was accessed by Black homeowners. So 5.8 billion with a B to 198 million. So there's a huge discrepancy there as it relates to the way Blacks were able to capitalize on this. And historically, this has always been the case. So when you look at what are some of the reasons that Black home ownership has been so low, if you will, throughout the years. One is because of redlining. Two, historically, Blacks have paid a higher interest rate for mortgages than others have. Uh, Blacks, when they come out of college, have twice the amount of debt as others have. They have less in savings, which makes it difficult for them to buy houses. So what do we do? How do we fix this problem? Well, one is through education, financial education. Number two, we need to get out of debt. Number three, we need to have a savings plan. And number four, we again, maybe I call one and four kind of both in the same in terms of us having the education as it relates to being able to know exactly what it takes to purchase a house. And the state of South Carolina leads the nation in black home ownership, with about 53% of black people there actually own their own homes in the state of South Carolina, which was I was surprised that it was South Carolina and not maybe somewhere like New York or LA or Chicago, but it was surprising. But in order to, when blacks do, become home ownership, what this does is it's an automatic savings mechanism, because as you make those payments, you build equity. You build equity in your home, and after 15 to 20 years, you can actually have your home paid for, depending on how you finance it. If you set up for a 15-year mortgage, set up for 20 years or 30 years, which is historically what most people do. And but you can set it up for 15 years, 30 years, and still pay it off in 15 to save yourself a lot of interest, which means that you probably doubling up on your payment. I remember, just kind of take you back a little bit. In Springfield, Illinois, where I reside, about 20 years ago, we embarked upon a project to build a small subdivision in a predominantly black area of towns called Eastview Estates in Springfield, Illinois. When we announced this project, there were a lot of critics who basically said, oh, it's going to be a ghetto because black people are going to live there. They're not going to take care of the places. It'll never work. Just all sorts of negative criticism, because this had never been done, at least on this particular scale that I'm aware of. There were other subdivisions that were built, but not in an area such as where we built the homes at. And as a result of that, as we announced the homes and tried to have some certain incentives, which is something else that's important for black home ownership, is be able to have some sort of incentives that they can capitalize on. And we knew that at the time that a lot of our folk had bad credit. So we had to figure out a way to be creative, to be able to get our people in some of these houses. And so what we did, at the time, interest rates were like 9% interest. Back in 2000, 2001, interest rates were 9% interest. So what we did, we reached a deal with the Illinois Housing Development Authority, which is a financier, here governmental entity here in Illinois. And what we did through IDA is that we reached a deal with them that individuals that purchase homes in our subdivision would receive 5% fixed interest. 5% fixed interest. This is at a time when interest rates were 9%. And they still had to qualify. There were some qualifying things from an education, from the income standpoint that they needed to meet. And so what we did at that time, these were FHA loans, to whereby they could get by with, I think it's 3% down. And so we struck a deal with the city of Springfield at the time that they would in turn put up 2% down. So in essence, you can move into a brand new house if you had all the credentials, the proper credit, and this type of thing, for 1% down, which is really good for black people in terms of being able to put down 1%. We were selling the homes then probably $130,000, $140,000, so roughly $1,500, $1,600 you can be in a brand new home. And what we found too is that there was a segment of the population that had less than stellar credit, but yet they were still paying, an amount in rent that was probably more than what they could get a mortgage for. So what we did also we formed another entity, and we started our own mortgage company. We were mortgage brokers, and we started our own mortgage company. So we were able to take these individuals who could not get quote unquote conventional financing through a bank. And because we were brokers, we probably at the time had about 75 different lenders throughout the country that we worked with, depending on what your credit score was, and we could actually get these individuals financed. Because we were the developer, and at the same time too, I was the builder. I had a company at the time that we actually built the houses, so we could control everything from the start to the finish. We owned all the land. We had the construction company. We had the financing company for those individuals that could not get conventional financing, and we had to do some creative things. There were some projects, some homes that we had to do like a seller second carryback. Because they didn't have good credit, and they might have to put down 10%. So we would do some creative things, maybe take it back a seller second to allow them to get into the house, and then we were probably paying a higher interest rate. But our thing was that if you're paying $1,100 a month, say in rent, and we can get you in a brand new house, even though your interest rate is higher and you're paying $1,000 a month, where the thing being was that take the loan, get the house, because one, you're paying cheaper than what you would be paying for rent. Number two, you're owning the home and you're building equity. Number three, you can take and refinance that house probably after a year if you make your payments as agreed and get a lower interest rate and then lower your payment even more. So that's what we did back then. And I remember too, when we started building the houses, that because it was a predominantly Black area and people who really didn't know where it was at, we had basically no whites that wanted to move into the subdivision because it was a Black area, and they just didn't want to move in, which was fine with us because we were still selling the houses. But fast forward, 20 years later now, the subdivision is one of the nicest subdivisions in the city of Springfield. The homes are well maintained. And whenever one of those homes come up for sale, guess who's buying them now? Well, I think what has happened is that they've shown over a 20-year period that they're going to take care of those homes. They're going to make those homes nice, and they'll be able to increase the value of those homes over the years in terms of appreciation. And to me, I felt that was so important because it was a beginning of the creation of wealth for a lot of Blacks here in Springfield, because they were able to basically own their own home. And to this day, when I drive through there and look at how well the homes are maintained, and there are policemen there, there are school teachers there, governmental workers, people working private industry, and they've created a community. And there's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. A community is where you worship at, where you spend your money at, where you live. A neighborhood is basically just where you stay. And neighborhoods are evolving because you have a lot of transients as relates to rentals and different types of home ownership. So you really don't have the stability in the neighborhood that you have in the community. And unfortunately, throughout the country, whenever another way that Blacks actually lose wealth is when they go to sell their homes. There's a thing in the Black community known as you have to pay what's called a Black tax when you go to sell your home. And somebody said, well, what's a Black tax? That means is that your home is going to be valued less because it's owned by Black people, and that's been historically proven throughout the country. I know several individuals that have went through this thing. I remember reading Earl Graves' book, the guy that started Black Enterprise magazine. And in a chapter in his book, he stated that he and his wife, when they went to sell their home, they had a very nice home in the upscale part and out east. I don't know if it's New Jersey or New York or wherever it was. And they had their house on the market for quite some time. Couldn't get any offers at all. So what they did a thing that, is known in the black community, is that they de-blacked their house. And so what they did, they took down all the pictures, put away anything you had any hint of ethnicity. And guess what? They sold the house in less than 30 days. And if you just Google this online, you'll see that this is something that's historically been that way. And I can even tell you a personal experience. When my wife and I, we first got married, we bought a house. And we were in that house a couple years. We put some money into it. We finished the basement, did some things, upgrade the house. And it was a real, pretty decent neighborhood. It was clean. When we put the house on the market, I remember the house sat on the market probably for 60 days, got 0 offers in that 60 days. Maybe it's 45 days, whatever it was. I know we didn't get any offers at all. So I told my wife, what we need to do, we need to, quote unquote, de-black the house. I don't know if that was a term I used back then, because this was probably 30 years ago. But I remember I took down all our pictures that we had. I put away all the hot sauce bottles, make sure we didn't have any pig feet or pig snoots or whatever. Anything you had any hint of ethnicity, we took it out. And I remember we went to the store and we bought picture frames that had people in the picture frames. They had white people in the picture frames, and we put them out throughout the house and just made our house as bland as possible. And guess what? We sold our house in 2 weeks. Full offers on top of that. I remember when we walked into the closing, to see the eyes on the people when they seen my wife and I walk in, they were just wide-eyed and said, well, too late. We got to earn this money. You've been approved for the loan, so we're going to close this thing. So, and I had that happen. Another friend of mine here in Springfield, he and his wife had a very nice house in the subdivision and had the house on the market for 3 months, got 0 offers. And he told me the same thing. They de-blacked their house, took down all the paintings, took down everything, and sold their house in this matter of 2 or 3 weeks, full price. So this is one of the things that also robs blacks of wealth when they even go to sell their house. There's been studies, there's been lawsuits that have been filed as it relates to even appraisals. Out in, I believe it was California, there was a couple that went to sell their house, and they had their house appraised, and the appraisal came back really low. So then they had one of their white neighbors go in and be in the house, got a different appraiser, came out, and the house appraised for $500,000. You heard me, $500,000 more than what the first appraisal was. So, these are some of the things that rob blacks of equity and rob us of our wealth. And I can even tell you a story on that, a personal story. Some years later, my wife and I, we built a house in a very exclusive subdivision. And I remember taking the blueprints to the bank, and the bank had an appraiser look at the blueprints, and the appraisal came back at a certain dollar amount. And so the bank based their loan on a certain percentage of what that home was appraised at. So we got a construction loan. We built the house, and we even added some things afterward. There weren't in the initial blueprints. We put in, we had about over 6,000 square feet of finished space in the house. And I remember, I put a circle driveway in. I put an underground sprinkler system in. I had a sun porch. So I did even more than what was on the blueprints. And so when the house was complete, the bank sent an appraiser out. They sent a different appraiser out than the one that did the initial appraisal. And the appraisal came back at $70,000 less than what the initial appraisal was from before we even started construction. Now, I jumped up and down. I told the guy at the bank, I'm not paying for this appraisal. This is, black people moving to the house, all of a sudden the value go down. They sent another appraisal out, and lo and behold, the price was more than what the first appraisal was. And I never forgot that. And that was something that always stuck with me, because I know it was so important in terms of how we build wealth as Black people in this country. And the number one way, again, is for us is home ownership. So, we built a lot of houses. We have put a lot of Black people in houses to this day. Some of them haven't paid off. Several of them haven't paid off. They have assets that are worth $150,000, $170,000, $180,000 that they own now. So guess what you can do with that equity? You can go buy your second house somewhere, take that equity, buy your second house, start your own business, put your kids in college, give money to your kids for a down payment, leave that house to your kids. But it's a start. It might not be a real big start, but it's a start towards the path, the wealth for Black people in this country. So I noticed that, throughout the course of history, we've just, we come out of slavery and they told us that we were free as slaves, and they told us to go compete. Or compete with what? You don't have anything, you don't have any wealth, and then even to this day, on the eve of the Civil War in this country, Black people had 1/2 of 1% of this country's wealth. Here we are now, 2024, and guess what? We have 1/2 of 1% of this country's wealth. We haven't moved 1 iota in over 160, 170 years. So what do we do? I mean, what are some other ways that we can build wealth? Well, I'm always one of the ones that look at the numbers and the masses of numbers in terms of, where do we spend our dollars at? What do we do? How can we help build wealth? And one of the biggest organizations, if you will, that take in money in the Black community is the Black church. Billions and billions of dollars that they take in every year. And for some reason, how are those dollars being used? How are they being leveraged to do things in the Black community? I'm talking about the Black church. Why can't they take those dollars and pool them together and start a bank, to start a credit union, to do projects such as these, to provide housing? And believe me, there are some that are doing this. So this is not a blanket statement to say that this is something that's happening all over the country, that Blacks don't do this. But in the sheer numbers of Black churches that they have, we can do it. And so I asked a question, why is it that they can't do that? And a lot of times I think it's because of denominational barriers, because they can't work together because of denominational barriers, because you're Baptist, you're Pentecostal, you're Episcopalian, and I've heard it said before that, Jesus was baptized, but he wasn't a Baptist. Jesus never called himself a Jehovah's Witness, but he was a witness of Jehovah. What do you think? Jesus never called himself a lot of things. So why is it that they can't find common ground? And this is not a slam on the church. I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to slam them, but I'm just thinking of ways to how we work together as Black people. We can pull our dollars together and be able to do for ourselves, and not being at the trough all the time, have to beg people to do the things for us that we can't do for ourselves. Our economy, the Black economy in this country, is equal, I want to say, to the 12th or the 14th or 15th largest economy in the world. In terms of overall dollars that Black people have. But yet we spend 98% of those dollars outside our community, 98%. So we have people living off 100% of their income and 98% of our income. So it's kind of hard to build wealth when you're picking your dollars like that. Even look at, the Black hair care market. Asians control almost 100% of that. When is the last time you've seen Black hair care markets or businesses? Not very many. And if they do have them, they get squeezed because they have to buy their products from who? So you think they're going to give Black people a better price than they're giving their own people? So therefore, their prices have to be higher. So, these things are, it's kind of academic when you really start looking at this in terms of the amount of money that we have in our hands as a people, and then look at the condition that we're in financially. It's almost criminal. It's almost criminal. But there are some organizations out there that are doing some great things. Just a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed a guy out of St. Louis, and I believe he's listening tonight. His name Michael Burns. They operate a not-for-profit in the St. Louis area, whereby they are building houses, some for sale, some for rent. There's a pastor here in Springfield named Reverend Silas Johnson, who's building a lot of houses there for rent. But at the same time, these are new houses, and eventually these individuals will be able to buy those houses. But until then, they're for rent. But you got to start somewhere, and I understand that. But if we start looking at these ways that we can pool these dollars together and be able to create these areas where we can purchase houses at. You go in the hood in any one of these major cities, black cities in the country, you're going to see dilapidated houses. You're going to see empty lots. So how can we take those lots and make those houses, build brand new houses and make them affordable? Because unfortunately, if you build that house in the affluent area of town, the same house in the affluent area of town or in the hood, it's going to cost you the same amount of money to build that house. The same amount of money. Maybe you might get a break on buying the building materials. You might not have to pay taxes on it. So that might save you maybe $4,000 or $5,000. But the same token, you're going to still pay the same amount of money. But another problem is that you build that 2,000 square foot house in the affluent area of town, it might appraise at $450,000. You build that same house in a black area of town or area that's kind of economically depressed, it might cost you $375 to build it, but it might only appraise at $250 because you don't have comparable sales. And so how do you get over that hurdle? Well, that's where partnerships are important. And you're able to do some things from a partnership standpoint. And say, for instance, and I'm going to use this as an example. You want to build these new houses, and say these houses are going to cost you $250,000. But you're able to find a grant or work with your governmental entity, the cities, whatever that you live in. They're able to say, hey, we're going to put up $75,000 per each house. It's going to go towards the purchase of that house. So it won't go to you, the builder, but it'll go to the person that's buying the house. And so now you take that price from $250,000 down to $175,000, which is actually the amount that's being financed, but the sale price is $250,000. So from a bank standpoint, you're able to reduce the amount of monies that will be needed to finance that house, but at the same time, too, you will establish a sale price of $250,000. And that's one of the ways that you can get going. That's one of the things that we did when we first built our subdivision as well, because we didn't have the comparable sales. And we had to also lean on some of the appraisers and to get them to go outside the boundaries, if you will. I mean, when they appraise houses, there's a certain track that they can go into in terms of the houses that are in that track that come up with comparable sales. More often than not, they want to narrow those tracks in the black community and then try to make it for that particular area. When they can go maybe a mile or 2 miles away, they might have other similar type homes that will give them that opportunity. So we had to lean on these appraisers back then. And once we got about 5 or 6 houses up, we were able to establish that market, and we didn't have any other problems with appraisal. So there are a lot of things that can be done to increase, our wealth. And the number one way to do it is through home ownership. When I drive through that subdivision, like I said, I just smile and I just see, and I'll probably put a video up. I did drive through the subdivision. I talked to certain individuals that live there, that have their homes paid for, and you can see how nicely the homes are maintained, the lawns are well kept. And they weren't real big houses, 1,500, 1,700 square feet when we built them, but they were really nice. We used all quality material. We had architectural shingles, we had siding, we had brick. We had full basements, we had fence yards, we had solid front yard, we had security systems, we had decks on them, we had fireplaces, we had jacuzzi tubs. We had some really nice houses. And the same thing, amenities that you would see in other houses. And I remember I had other people that wanted me to come to their community and build houses. There was a lady at the time who I know, and she had bought a lot of land in a particularly white area of town and asked would I come there and build houses. I said, no, I think I want to build in our area where we really need them at. Well, I did get one lot over there from her, and I built the exact same house that I built in the black community, the exact same house, nothing any different. The house that I sold for 140 in the black community, exact same house that I sold for 189,000 for the exact same house. So that goes to show you when you start talking about, black areas. And another thing, which is real big in real estate, and they call it location, location, location. Where is the house located at? And what are some of the hot markets, throughout town, throughout the country? I was in Houston, Texas recently where my son stays, and it is the hottest housing market in the country. And you have huge builders there that will come in about 200, 300 acres and will build 1,500, 1,600 houses and will have 7 or 8 different floor plans and will finance you, which I think is remarkable because, one, again, it's the fastest growing city in the country, the most diverse city in the country. And just to see the amount of construction that's going on there is remarkable. And then Texas is the number 2 state in the country in terms of black population. You have major cities there, San Antonio, you have Dallas, you have Houston. So you have some big cities there that have, big population. And, when I think about all of our entertainers, athletes that have millions and millions of dollars, and naturally, they can do what they want to do with their dollars, but, who are some of the ones that are putting back into the community, that are doing things, in the community in terms of being able to help increase the wealth of black people? And there are quite a few. I know some personally that are doing some things, but unfortunately, they don't get the accolades that they should get. And a lot of times, there are people that don't want them to do that because there's a certain element of power that comes when you have wealth. A good friend of mine, Mike Roberts out of St. Louis, he always stated that he said some people didn't know who he was. And Mike has been through some things, but he said, rich people scream, but wealthy people whisper. And I always remember that what he said. And we can do a whole lot when we pool our dollars together. I always use another example. I hold my hand up for those you can see my hand. If I took this one finger and I hit you with that one finger, you're going to say, man, I really didn't feel that. That's just one finger. But if I take that same hand, so you can see it, I take that same hand and I do this, I bring all those fingers together, and now when I hit you, you're going to feel that. You know why? Because I brought all the elements together, and there was more power coming together than it was being divided. And this is where we are a lot of times, and unfortunately in this country as black people, is that this is where we are. We're divided, and we never have that power to whereby we can do this and start striking down Jim Crow, start striking down redlining, start striking down a lot of the things that plague us as black people in terms of being able to gain wealth. So we got a lot of work to do. Politicians can't do it. These are some things that we have to do for ourselves. They can pass laws and do this, that, and the other. And unfortunately, when they pass a lot of the laws that were supposed to benefit us as black people, everybody else benefited except us. So what is that about? And I'm not on some sort of rant, black man rant, angry black man rant. People that know me know that's not my MO. That's not how I get down. I try to treat everybody the same, but at the same time too, I recognize the disparities as it relates to us and other individuals, other people in this country in terms of wealth, the way we live, how we live, and the things that we have access to. So I get that. And, I've kind of devoted, a big portion of my life to helping black people, having businesses or helping other blacks get into business, starting a black chamber of commerce. Just those things that will help us as a people, because I realize, our days on this earth, we're not going to be here for a long period of time. As scripture says, you get, what's it, 70 years old, and then you've done something. So, what kind of impact have you made, since you've been on this earth in terms of helping Black people or helping people in general? Whatever you left to your children, scripture says that a wise man will not only leave an inheritance to his children, but his children's children. And I believe that we can do it. I know that we can do it. And I believe that the number one way that we can do it is through home ownership, to whereby we can own something. Well, I remember when we built our subdivision, it was so important to us to make sure that when we built the subdivision, that we use as many Black-owned companies as we could, because I recognize that if we get those dollars circulating within the community, that we can create jobs within the community. So when we built the subdivision, we had a Black drywall company, we had a Black painting company, we had a Black excavating company, we had a Black company that did the floor covering, did the tile. We had a Black-owned company that did the framing, which is a company that I own. We had a Black-owned electrical contracting company that did all the electrical work. And we had some white-owned companies in there too, but we made sure that Black people got something out the deal. When we got builder's risk insurance, we made sure we used Black people. When we put the burglar alarms into place, and we found a Black-owned company. So we did something that had never been done before in a town such as small Springfield, because these same individuals who couldn't get work, in the affluent areas of town because they didn't want them working in those houses out there, we made sure that they were able to get work in the project that we did. And you know what they did? They created a legacy for them, because they can drive down the street with their grandkids in the street and look and say, you know what? Your grandpa drywalled all those houses. Your grandpa, poured all those foundations. Your grandpa, did all the trim work in there. And that's how, legacies are built. And at the same time, too, pride, too, because it was important to us when we built the subdivision to make sure that we created a neighborhood of Black people that as kids, they can see, hey, man, they got the yards nice. They getting up, they're going to work every day. They ain't got no drama going on. They ain't got no raggedy cars sitting out in front of the house. They ain't got loud parties going on. That was important. And kids need to see that, because then they'll strive for the exact same thing. So it's just amazing, once you really, start taking a look at this and to see the impact that can be made throughout the country. I grew up in St. Louis, and I, grew up in public housing, stayed in the Peabody projects, went to school there till I was a sophomore. Then we moved to Illinois. And still got a lot of friends in St. Louis area right now too. And, I just try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening there. I don't go there as much, but I have a lot of relatives that still live in that area, and I have an opportunity to travel around the country. I was in the St. Louis Cardinal organization as a baseball player years ago, and I still know a lot of the guys that I played with. Never made it to the major leagues, but Darryl Strawberry and Terry Pendleton and Willie McGee and Vince Coleman and Ozzie Smith. We all came up through the minors. Ozzie didn't. I didn't play with Ozzie, but I know Ozzie. And so it was a good experience, but it gave me an opportunity to travel and go other places and to meet people and to, get access to people. So it means a lot. I'm definitely, I'm pro-Black, but I'm not anti-white by any means. And I just see the good that can happen, not only in this town, but throughout the country. If we work together and come up with a plan to be able to, finance houses, to be able to finance businesses. And, I had an opportunity to bring some speakers here to Springfield years ago when I was president of the Black Chamber. One guy was Dr. Claude Anderson, who wrote the book called Powernomics. And he was telling me a story about, I think it was George Fraser, who I had an opportunity to interview some years ago when I was publishing a newspaper. And apparently George was selling whatever particular products that he was selling at the time, and he was in Washington, D.C. And he went into an Asian-owned business to sell whatever this product was he was selling. This is a story that was told to me by Dr. Anderson. And he was trying to sell this product, and then they told him, hey, you just don't understand. We don't buy products from nobody but our own people, and we don't understand why you guys don't do the same thing. They practice group economics. And, you can go to any of the restaurants, whatever, you don't see anybody working there except their own people. And that's fine. But, we need to be the same as well, because we got to figure out a way how we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole, how we're going to make it better for us as a people, to whereby we can eliminate crime in our neighborhoods, we can eliminate blight in our neighborhoods. Even with the churches, you might have a church in a good neighborhood, in a bad neighborhood, and you got 10 crack houses around you. Guess what? Instead of taking up a collection for the pastor's anniversary, let's take up a collection for economic development. And let's go in and buy these houses. Let's fix them up. And there's a pastor in Detroit, Michigan that's doing this. Let's go in and buy these houses and fix them up and put our members in those houses. And we hold the mortgages and let them pay us every month. We won't charge them a lot on interest. That's the way you do it. And I take my hat off, too, to a comedian in Indianapolis, Mike Epps. I just saw something online to whereby he bought a lot of the houses in the neighborhood that he grew up in. He said a lot of these houses he got evicted out of as kids. He bought the whole block. And if you Google it, you'll see where he's taken this entire block of houses and just bought them all, fixed them up, and it's gorgeous. But that type of thing, it's a little thing that what he did there, but it can be contagious, and it can happen throughout this entire country. We need housing for our seniors. Another big thing now in new construction, maybe not so much here in the Midwest, is what they call next generation housing, where they build new houses and they call it next gen, but really they call them mother-in-law quarters. As your population ages, your parents start getting older, you don't want to put them in no nursing home, put them somewhere where you can't see them at or be around them, and they build just an extra wing on the house, have a separate suite in it, or you can put your parents in, and you're right there. If something happens, you're right there. You don't have to put them in some nursing home, and you can charge them some amount of money for rent. It don't have to be an exorbitant amount, but it's something, and it can go towards paying your mortgage. So now you still building wealth at the same time too. You're helping some of your family members as well. So there's just a lot that we can do, and I get excited about it, but at the same time too, I'm getting older as well. I tell everybody I'm rounding third base right now, and I like to see the younger generation come forth and do some of these things. And we live in an entirely different age now than it was 30 years ago, the information age that we live in. And within a matter of seconds, you can be viral on something that you didn't even plan on doing. And next thing you know, you're worth millions of dollars. Let me give you an example. I believe it was Kansas City, Missouri. There was a homeless guy who was sitting out in front, I guess wherever he was at. He had his tin cup or whatever and asking for money. This lady comes by one day and she puts some money in the cup, digs in her pocket, puts some money in the cup. So when she gets home later that evening, she realized that she had her diamond ring, expensive diamond ring, in her pocket. So when she took this money out and put it in the cup, she put a diamond ring in the cup as well. And so they were frantic. Her and her husband were frantic. So the next day they went right back to this same location, and there the guy was there. And he said, "Hey, I believe I left my diamond ring in your cup yesterday. I put it in there by mistake. Did you see it?" The guy said, "You know what? I do have it, and I knew, I couldn't keep this diamond ring. It wasn't mine, and I figured maybe you'd come back, but I kept it." Well, as a result of that, they were so moved by that this lady and her husband started a GoFundMe account for this guy. Now, this guy was homeless. Started a GoFundMe account for this guy, and as a result, raised, I want to say, $500,000 to $600,000, a nice piece of change. And this was the guy that was just homeless, earlier. He took that money, bought a house, and as a result of the publicity that he received by doing that, he was able to get in touch with a long-lost brother that he hadn't seen in 30 or 35 years. So the moral of that story is that, always do right even when no one is looking. And as a result of that, and I can just tell you countless stories about, because of this age that we live in with the internet and being able to post stuff and go viral. How can you go on the show? I believe it was the Dr. Phil show. And with some lady on there, a young white lady, And she just made the statement, cash me outside, cash me outside. Just a statement. I just see this lady has a house in Florida that she's listing for sale now for $2.3 million that she paid $1.7 million for and paid cash. She became a celebrity just by saying, cash me outside. So that just goes to show you the age that we're living in and the way people value information, or how you can just be, my goodness, at the drop of a button, everybody in the world can know who you are. And that's the age that we're living in, folks. So everybody got a shot to do something now. You got a cell phone with a camera on it. You capture something, you do something, and you might not even be trying. And all of a sudden, you're viral. I don't like to talk about a lot of gossip stuff, but, there's been, what I want to talk about it. Everybody knows what's been going on in online, and some of the comments that people have been making about other individuals. I don't even like to get into that, so I'll squash that because it's negative. It serves no purpose for us as a people, because unfortunately, a lot of people, they drive on drama, and that drama does not get us anywhere as a people. So forgive me for bringing that up. That's not my MO. I don't like doing that. So I know I've said a lot this evening about a lot of things, but my primary focus was to talk about home ownership, especially in the Black community, and ways that we can own homes, and even past owning a home to live in. I mean, you can own a home as investment property. One time I owned a lot of investment property, about 60 or 70 houses at one time we owned, and was able to use, those homes as collateral to, to do other things, or have other businesses with. And it wasn't that hard, folks. And real estate is probably the number one way that you make money. I think the richest people in this world, a lot of them started in real estate. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some money hungry person, because I know when you leave this world, I've never seen a Brinks truck at a funeral, and you can't take none of it with you. So basically what you're doing is you're making it better for somebody else, because somebody else going to be living in your house, somebody else going to be driving your car, somebody else going to be spending your money, and hopefully it'll be your family and your children that you're able to do that for. So it's just so important. Redlining, it's another thing. It's so much that I could talk about as it relates to homes, and because I understand it. I'm not saying I'm no expert in it, but there's a lot of things that we can do to be able to help our people get out of this hole. And if you do own a home, I clap for you. Get that home paid for. And if you have children, make sure you leave that home to your children, and with no debt. What was it Chris Rock said in a movie I was watching one time? He said, white people die, leave a will. He said, Black people die, leave a bill. Now, there's a lot of truth to that as well. So I just know that we can do better as people. Even when I was just thinking back, even when we were building those houses, we went to list them. We listed them with all Black realtors. My wife had her own real estate company at the time. It was another guy named Tom Miner, and he might even be listening tonight. His company got some. It was another lady named Norma Jordan. She had a company. She got some. It was another lady named Beverly Christian. She had her own real estate company. She got some. So we even made sure that when we listed the houses, we listed them with Black realtors. And I remember when we started the project, and I had a call from a realtor. It was a white realtor, and again, nothing against her, but she called and she said in the conversation, "Hey, my name is so and so. I sold millions of dollars worth of property. I see you're doing a subdivision, and I want to be the exclusive agent to list these homes in your subdivision." I say, "Ma'am, with all due respect, I said I look like a fool to be able to let you list all these houses, and we got Black realtors in town who very seldom as ever to get an opportunity to list homes that are six-figure homes. So if you're that good of a realtor, what you can do, you can go sell their listings but I'm not going to let you take all these listings and then they got to come to you. How would I look? And that sends the wrong message. And boy, she got huffy and just said, well, I never. And I said, you sure won't, and went off. And, it is what it is. And we were committed. I was committed to make sure that this is an opportunity for us to do something major and have a lot of Black people benefit as a result of that. And then that's what happened. So it's something, when you drive by and you see how nice the houses are, and to know that people have taken care of those houses, they've taken pride in those houses, and they got an asset that's worth something. And to know that I played a little bitty small part in that. And I'm beginning, and folks, let me say this too. It's not that I'm just trying to toot my horn and make myself to be all that, because that's not who I am. But I'm saying it's just as an example of what you can do in other cities and other parts of the country by just having a plan and start with housing. You can't go wrong there, because people need a place to stay. And even if it's not a place to sell, even if it's a place to rent, that they can eventually buy it. Because people want nice housing. Everybody don't want to live in the hood, whereby you got gunshots and people breaking in their house. You got bars on your one to keep the criminals out. But in essence, it's keeping you in too. So let's work together. Let's get some things done. Again, there are a lot of people doing a lot of things throughout the country who don't get the accolades in the paper. We don't see them in USA Today. We don't see them in the mainstream media, which that's another thing too, in terms of having our own media that'll tell our stories. Because oftentimes, when we get told the stories, we robbing somebody, we beating up somebody, we getting shot, or we shooting somebody. But let's tell a lot of the positive things that we do, where we have everyday heroes in these communities that are doing great things, that basically they don't get any accolades for what they do. And that's why, and that's another story. That's another topic I can get into, talking about, Black-owned media. And even now, so today, just me doing this podcast, and it's just something I like to share information and to figure out a way that we can help people, help them overcome whatever things that they have going on, if it's poverty or whatever, because, it's we can all rise together. And we can all rise together and not be jealous of one another, because unfortunately, that's one of the things that plague us, unfortunately, as a people. And I just get so sick and tired of it. It's jealousy. As they say, the crabs in the bucket mentality, and that's very prevalent in our community. And I don't see it as in mass in other communities like I do our own. And, a lot of this probably got to do with the way we've been institutionalized, through slavery and whatnot. And, those same habits have been passed on and on and on, and unfortunately. But you got to have a love for your people to be able to put up with a whole lot of stuff, even over the course of years. I've been talked about, and this, that, and the other, people jealous. And what, at the end of the day, what have you done for your people other than this? Is yakking, talking. Put your money where your mouth is. What y'all think? What y'all think? Anybody got any questions? They want to throw them up on the board. I see, let's see, Chaplain says this is very important information that's being shared. Thank you. Well, thank you for listening. Share this video with your friends. I think it's very important. Tom Miner, he is watching, says good discussion. Thanks, Tom. I remember when you started your business, and you've had some ups and downs, but man, this guy keeps swinging. He keeps fighting. He's put a lot of people in houses. He's done a lot of good things to help the community. Deborah O'Neill, we went to high school together years ago. Her brother is a friend of mine named Larry. Remember him from living in the projects years ago. So, and Michael Burns, like I said, Mike's watching. Mike, I just did a story on an interview with him. He's been doing a lot of development down in North St. Louis. So there are a lot of things that are happening positive throughout our communities. And because, folks, we got a lot of blight in our community, so we got a lot of stuff that we can develop. Years ago, we took some dilapidated housing and built the strip mall in the black community. First time they built the strip mall in the black community here. We had businesses in there because I looked at what do we spend our money on as black people? What do we spend our money on? $28 billion a year on cell phones, $67 billion a year on automobiles. More cognac was sold in Detroit, Michigan last year than anywhere in the world. In the world, not in the country, in the world. So we got to figure out where we spending our dollars at. How can we get those same type of businesses that we give money to other people and keep those dollars within our community? It's not that hard, folks. We just got to bear down and say we're going to do it and have the discipline to do it, not be jealous of one another. If we got to pay $2 more to buy something, pay the $2 more, because eventually it's economy of scale. If I'm able to buy 10,000 pair of jeans and pay $5 a pair for it, but if I got to buy 500 pair, I might be paying $20 a pair for them. So the more you spend those dollars, you rotate them around the community, the better it's going to be for other businesses as well. So this has been a good. I've enjoyed this sharing information. I want to bring other people on the show and have them get their perspective about stuff, because it's so important. And I just think that we can do a whole lot to help each other, just to help each other. And it's not that hard, folks. We can do it. I know we can. And I've seen it happen, not on the big scale, but, you start small. I heard a guy say one day, he said, little money stacked up to make big money. And that's so important. So we can do a lot of positive things throughout our community. If you know somebody out there that's doing something positive, pat them on the back. Go tell them what you appreciate. Tell them what you appreciate what they're doing for the community, for your people. Because they like to hear that, because you get beat up enough by the press, by the other negative things. So let's pat those individuals on the back and tell them we appreciate, what it is that they're doing. I know I've talked a lot. I've shared a lot of information. Hopefully it's been something that you guys can grasp, being able to, do something, in an area that you feel like, it's important. Wherever you live at throughout this country, and wherever you see black people at, we need help. We need help. And it doesn't always start with elected officials. It doesn't always start with the people that I call the leaders. What is a leader? Anybody can get a big crowd and then go stand in front of the crowd and say, I'm a leader. But it takes a person that's willing to stand in front when ain't no crowd behind them, and to take all the body shots and to take all the criticism, because eventually that person will become a leader. And then people, the first thing they'll say, well, I remember when. Okay, but were you there when they needed you to be there? I couldn't imagine the criticism that probably Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had to take, especially when them folk hitting them folk upside the head and beating folk, and he said, I'm not going to fight back. I'm not going to swing back or do anything. Naturally, Malcolm X, took a different approach, and they had two different approaches in terms of, what they felt. Malcolm's thing was that, say it's time to stop singing and start swinging. And unfortunately, someone took his life, and, all the good ones that seem like they go out and try to do things, they take them out. So be martyrs. But if you're not willing to die for something, it's nothing worth really live for. So what is it that you're willing to die for? Is it your family? Is it your community? Is your money? Is your business? Your neighborhood? Ask yourself that question. Ask yourself that question. So, well, I know I've said a whole lot, talked a whole lot tonight, and I just call this like freestyle Friday, where I'm just here, just shooting from the hip, not the lip. So You know, if you liked what you heard tonight, I got a YouTube page. Go to YouTube page and like our page and subscribe to it. You'll see some other interviews on there that I've done with other people. I'm really big into health as well. You know, to talk about plant-based eating, that's something that's very important to me. I've recently dropped 53 pounds just by changing my diet, stop eating sugar, which, I mean, that's another story. But it all goes into, you know, our health. You know, as Black people, we have the worst health as well. So again, that's another conversation. I can have so many different conversations about issues that are important to us. I just chose housing tonight. I did something, talked about food, and there's so much we can talk about. And if you got a topic that you want me to talk about or bring up, shoot me a DM. You got a guest that you feel like I need to talk to, shoot me a DM, and I'll try to set up something where we can get them on here and we can just talk. You know, it's kind of like sitting in the barber shop. You know, that's where you get some of your best conversations at, in the barber shop. Or the beauty salon. Why is that in the Black community anyway? I don't know. I think about the movie Coming to America, you know, all those old guys sitting around the barbershop talking. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off then. Wave at me and say, I enjoyed the show, Mike. Enjoyed what you talked about. And I look forward to you coming back on again. I might come on tomorrow and I might have a guest on and we talk about something entirely different. For those that watched the last show, I had a guy on out of St. Louis. His name was Paul McKee, white guy that's bought up a whole lot of land in Black community in St. Louis. He started buying 20 years ago, and he had a lot of plans to do a lot of stuff. And, you know, he struggled with it, but he's still in there swinging. I commend him because this guy was a millionaire. He didn't have to come to the Black community in North St. Louis and spend his money trying to buy land and do stuff. And he said his friends said that he was crazy to put all this money in the Black community. So I commend him for it. You know, I know he's taking a lot of flack, taking a lot of body shots because they say he don't fix up the property. And his comment was like, hey, people act like I made it bad. It was bad before I came over here. And he wasn't arrogant when he said it either, you know. And I wanted to give him a platform to be able to talk about, you know, his side of the story, because the press was they just beat the mess out of him down there. And yet this guy done spent a whole lot of money, you know, trying to help a Black community. So I take my hat off to him. You know, others might criticize me and say, man, you don't know the whole story, but I understand it from a development standpoint. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and shoot me a DM. You want to come on the show? You got a topic to talk about? And I'm not an expert on a lot of stuff, but what's the old thing saying is that, you know, surround yourself with people who are smart, that know more than what you know about a topic, and let them go at it. I don't like controversy. I only like things that's going to bring us closer together as people. So don't come to me with no, hey, did you hear about this person? I ain't got time for that. That don't bring us anywhere as a people. Bring some positive energy. Okay? Y'all done? Okay. All righty then. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits and, go to my YouTube page, look at some of the shows we've done, and we'll talk later. Bye. Take care now.